Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life in the Red podcast. Luke Mullin and Amie Just, as usual, another week down and a lot happening, actually.
I know.
Yeah, last couple weeks, I kind of been like, we got to beef up this podcast. Not enough info out there, but volleyball, football, basketball, lots of stuff going on. Wrestling.
Track is starting, gymnastics. There's a lot of wrestling news.
Big duel coming up against Iowa. Absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah. So a lot of things going on right now in Nebraska athletics, and really want to talk football because it's an open recruiting period right now. And if there's one thing this staff does well that we know about already, it's recruit. I mean, they've been out there. They've been busy.
Everywhere.
Yeah. All the coaches, all doing their various, respective areas of the country and prospects. And I think the first thing we're talking about is the two transfer portal additions because, that's been part of the strategy. It is, of course, everywhere. But the latest two are the highest ranked guys, yet two blue chip prospects, former SEC stars, guys who've been down there, playing and going up against real tough competition. So first one to commit to Nebraska, edge rusher MJ Sherman coming from Georgia, mostly special teams there. But hey, when you're in practice every day against these guys, there's no doubt those reps will have improved him in a couple of years.
Yeah, and not that this overly matters, but I have a really good friend who covers Georgia, a couple good friends that cover Georgia, and he messaged me as soon as MJ committed here. He's like, "You're gonna love him. The best media availability we had all year was with him." So I'm really excited to get to know him a little better and hear his story. But it sounds like he's a fun person to get to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in terms of the on-field stuff, 2 seasons of eligibility left. Joining that edge rusher group / outside linebacker, however you want to, define it. But definitely has great upside, athleticism, and that's a room we've talked about a couple times. I mean, the path for playing time is there right away, and when you're a big time transfer like that, I mean, I have to imagine that's one of the top things you're looking for.
Facilities, when that facility opens, look out. I think we'll be seeing more of this. And, with that maybe comes the winning. And if you win, more people want to play there. It's like a cycle, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully, I guess.
Well, in it, there's a lot of different things the staff has been pitching these players on. And yeah, you mentioned that. I mean, that's a big one that they can add to the list very soon. But the other transfer portal addition, Eric Gilbert, and a huge position in need there at tight end. Really, was that spot where you're like, hey, who's gonna be the starter? Who's gonna come in and play meaningful minutes? And I guess probably the only thing downside to Gilbert is that he hasn't necessarily played meaningful minutes in a little bit. You look back to his season at LSU, had a very good season there. Not used very much at Georgia this past year, but he's coming in as a guy with all the physical skills and, again, the path to playing time.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how he fits in and how they want to use him. At LSU, they used him a lot. Not necessarily just as a pass catcher, though he did catch several his freshman year. He did a lot of blocking, too. So we'll see what they want to do with him. But I'm just excited at the prospect of maybe having a 22 personnel package.
Absolutely. I mean, that is the important thing because worth noting now, Nebraska has nation's #1 tight end recruit from 2020, which is Gilbert, and from 21, Thomas Fidone. But neither of these guys has caught a pass in a Nebraska uniform. And as you said, I mean, they're going to be using these 2 tight end sets, maybe even 3 tight ends.
Beautiful.
I mean, there's going to be a need to have these guys, blocking, pass catching, obviously all the different things that tight ends do. But when you have these different, versatile guys, it's not like, okay, just worry about the #1 tight end pass catching. I mean, there's a very conceivable situation where the tight ends are wreaking havoc for Nebraska out there.
Can't wait.
And so is the fullback. Good column coming up. Check it on Journal Star in a couple days. Amie talked to some former fullbacks. They're pretty pumped too.
Yeah, 4 of them, and Tom Osborne. So should be interesting. It was interesting. It's been written already. So it was fun conversations to have with those guys, though, because, Nebraska had a fullback, at least one, on their roster every year since the program started until Scott Frost got here. Wild. Anyway, don't want to give too much away.
Yeah, the great fullback drought, or we could come up with some.
I called it the Dark Ages. Is what I called it in my column.
That's good.
But yeah, don't want to spoil too much of that though. But yeah, I'm very ready for more physical football and using more 2 tight end sets, a fullback, like how football was, meant to be played. Anyway.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, when you think about the coaching staff trying to put in that new offensive system and defensive system too, I mean, there's always going to be a lot of roster overhaul. But if we look at the raw numbers right now, 33 total additions so far, 23 high school, and 10 from the transfer portal. And they're not done yet either. So right now, very over the, scholarship limit that they'll have to hit in the fall. But again, spring, that stuff will kind of settle out. But as they do keep adding, I mean, the math continues to stretch a little bit where you're like, hey, they're really going to have to cut this roster down. But you look at the additions and I mean, clearly, yes, they're trying to fit the system and they're just trying to bring in as much talent as they can.
And I mean, this is the year to do it, right?
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, you're already blowing everything up. You're blowing up the coaching staff. Regardless of who you have, you're blowing up the offensive scheme. You're blowing up the defensive scheme. Might as well blow up the roster.
For sure.
So, yeah, but it wouldn't surprise me if they get close to 40, which is like insane. But that's a problem for another day, I guess. Because you can be as far over as you want in the spring. They just got to whittle stuff down before we get to the football that really matters in the fall.
Certainly. But, I was interested too because I've been following kind of, the high school side of things. And, you have the early signing day. And I don't know if this is just like a me tendency or like a national tendency, but you think that national signing day, I mean, the build up to it, or the early signing day, I should say.
Yeah, national signing day is in February, bud.
Am I confused here?
Yes.
Yes. But anyway, I mean, the early signing day and especially the sprint that the new staff was in and colleges just across the country, I mean, it is a crazy hectic period up there into December. And I don't know, I just kind of had this idea that, they would get the bulk of their work done in that and, maybe a couple of prospects, trickle in. Well, hey, they've got a packed official visitor list coming in this weekend. The portal additions just keep rolling in. I mean, they are serious about recruiting to the max every day that they can do it.
Yeah, it's a small tangent about the early signing period. So back in my day, I covered the first one. That was nuts. But it just, I know they have to do something in December because of the transfer portal now, but it's so frustrating. And I couldn't imagine being on a football staff, especially like a new one, where you only have like X amount of weeks to be able to put together a class. Like, what about the trickle-down effect, right, of schools that don't fire their coach midseason and they either fire them at the end of the season, or they don't fire their coach, they love their coach, and he leaves for another job. Like, so you have to hire somebody and put a class together in, like, a week. Like, there needs to be a better way to do it, but I don't think there is, and it just sucks.
Yeah, I think the NCAA is looking at things, they're wondering about how to maybe position that, maybe you have signing day in January. I don't know. There, like you said, there's no perfect solution. And as you mentioned with the new staffs and stuff coming in, I mean, that's how you get
bowl preparation for the teams that are good. You have to balance your bowl prep with like a really hectic time for recruiting. Like, I don't remember which coach it was, if it was Georgia or TCU's coach that was talking about having like official visits like the week of the national championship game. That's crazy, but so she goes, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, it's how you have situations where some schools might have 30 players in their class, other schools have like 5, and then you've got, from a player side of things too, your situation changes, and then it's like, hey, if you're planning on enrolling early, you're like, hey, I got 2 weeks, to figure out where I'm going to spend the next 4 years. And obviously, I mean, recruiting relationships, it's not quite starting from scratch for most of these guys. But as you're saying, I mean, how condensed that is, that period, it adds a lot of pressure on for everybody.
Yeah, glad it's not my job.
Well, we made it past it for this year till it comes around next year. As I mentioned, the National Signing Day coming up February 1st, and the 2023 class, still a lot of guys coming in for official visits this weekend. Those players coming in are wide receiver Demetrius Bell, defensive lineman Sua Lefotu, tight end Ismail Smith-Flores, and wide receiver Jeremiah Charles, along with a 2024 target wide receiver Aaron Hampton, all coming in for official visits this weekend. It's a very interesting connections, I guess you could say, for the guys coming in, especially Charles and Smith-Flores. I think they know a guy or two on this staff, especially their old high school coach Bob Wager, who's now the tight ends coach, and which kind of brings me to the next point. The Texas-Nebraska pipeline, I mean, it is full steam go. I mean, they are all systems go. They are just going crazy on this Texas-Nebraska recruiting. In particular, just want to note that I've been following these new offers that they're going out to these 2024 prospects, and in a 24-hour period, 10 new offers, all to players down in Texas.
Well, I mean, between Matt Rule coaching there for so long with Baylor, well, so long, but it feels like it was longer because he really made inroads there with all of the high school coaches. And then with Bob, like he'd been there forever too. And high school coaches know each other. It's like a fraternity all over the place, several fraternities all over the place. And, those guys know that their friends have really talented players on their rosters, and it's not surprising, just knowing where a lot of these coaches either cut their teeth or have spent a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, their reputation is going a long way down there, just in regards, I think, to having those initial conversations with the players. And yeah, I mean, you can always send out offers to so many players. I mean, that's a nationwide thing where you cast a wide net and you whittle it down, that kind of thing. But I don't get that sense that that's necessarily what they're doing. I think when they're going into these schools in Texas, and obviously they're having these conversations with the coaches and the players, they're saying, hey, this is the plan for us to get these great players from Texas. As Matt Rule said in his introductory press conference, being a premier development program, these are the kind of things that they're pitching to these guys. And Rule and a lot of his assistants, having had that NFL experience, that's something that comes up a lot of the times when I've been talking to recruits. Is they say, hey, my position coach, they've been there, they've seen it, they're going to get me to the next level. So the credibility for the staff in Texas is tremendous, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Will be interesting to see how this develops in the years to come.
Yeah, and the other coaches have been out on the road as well. We're talking about Matt Rule heading down to Chandler, Arizona. He visited, of course, the top prospect in the entire class of 2024, Dylan Raiola, and then offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield was there just a couple days ago. So Nebraska very heavily pursuing him. I believe Georgia, USC, they've also been out there to see him. As you would expect, there's going to be some competition for number one recruit, number one quarterback, but Nebraska clearly making him a priority as maybe they should.
It's not surprising. I mean, obviously, I don't think this is the only reason why they kept Raiola, but on staff, but doesn't hurt, does it? No, it doesn't.
And I think the other thing, as we talk about recruiting, is that Matt Rule and all of his assistant coaches, they are competitive, not just from a standpoint of like, oh, we got to win this recruiting battle, but from a standpoint of like, let's make this program, this school better, let's show these recruits how we can improve them too. And so, I mean, if there's ever a competitive battle, it's going to be for the number one guy, and they're going to give him everything they've got. That's for sure.
It'd be so cool if he came here.
It'd be a storybook kind of a tale. It could be, but hey, we saw how that went with a certain head coach. So
yep,
reality and and plans are often different. But hey, this recruiting period, as I said, couple weeks, couple days, I think a week and a half they have left in this open period. February 1st, we'll expect to see a few decisions before then. Some players will decide then. I believe Demetrius Bell is deciding on that day as well. So those decisions will be for next couple weeks. And till then, coach is still on the road recruiting. EJ Barthel, he's been up and down the East Coast. He's been in Illinois. And then here in Nebraska, also in Iowa, Ed Foley continues. I thought I'd seen a lot of high schools in my couple years doing high school sports. I think Foley's probably got me beat just in a couple days, a couple weeks. He has been all over, just going to all these schools and building relationships, which is pretty cool to see.
And it's not just schools. Tom Chattel had a really good column today or yesterday about him going to Grand Island and going to schools around there. But he also went to the Fultz's house just to check in, to talk with them about their son, to learn about Nebraska football from a family that still bleeds it. And I just thought that was really cool.
No, for sure. And I think the staff is, obviously a lot of guys that aren't from Nebraska. They don't necessarily know all the traditions, past, previous great players, but it's very clear that they're working to, learn more about the history and what makes, everyday people, think about why Nebraska is special. They're just trying to figure out all that stuff as part of the equation and part of being a good coach and recruiter, I think. So
yeah. But Nebraska football shouldn't forget about Sam Foltz. And I'm just glad that the new staff is picking up where one former staff kind of let that go. It's disappointing. Anyway, getting better.
Yep. So I think that's our recruiting update as we have it. I know that was a lot of recruiting talk out there, but that's kind of dominant what's going on right now. And again, things will lessen after we get past that February date. And of course, the transfers right now is already about dying down, with semester ready to start here and other places as well. But talking about a couple other sports, we got to move on to a slightly disappointing and tough note to share. Of course, Whitney Lonstein announced she's stepping away from the volleyball team, choosing to be with her family in a tough time rather than focus on volleyball. And of course, I think it's, from a volleyball perspective, it's tough. She's a contributor to the team, but from a human perspective too, I mean, you have to imagine how difficult it is to go out there and compete at the highest level, play a sport that you love especially when you're hurting inside, and obviously wish her the best. I mean, it's a very tough decision to step away from a sport she's been playing at a high level for a long time.
Yeah, and so for the listeners who don't know, Whitney's dad died in 2021, and she just hadn't taken the time to process, I don't think. And so now she is giving herself the time to do that. It's such a hard decision to make. And so I know she doesn't, care what I have to say, but I'm really proud of her for that, because it's so hard to, number one, recognize that you need to step away from things, and then also to do it. Mental health is so important, and I just hope that she finds what she needs, and that if she wants to come back and play for Nebraska again one day, that they'll take her back with open arms.
Yeah, I have to imagine the door will always be open there. We know how well, John Cook tries to treat his players, and I think it's also worth noting that another member of her recruiting class, Riley Gray, in-state recruit from Elkhorn South, she had to step away due to medical hardship a couple of years ago, or a year or so about as well. So they've done a fantastic job of making sure that she's still doing well, and so I think that will continue. But me personally, I got the chance to cover Whitney in high school when she was there at Waverly. Actually, the first high school match I covered for the Journal-Star was Waverly, and they were playing, and got to talk to Whitney after the match, and I was talking to her coach, and I was saying, "Hey, is anybody recruiting her?" And she said, "Oh, maybe in a couple weeks we'll hear from something." And then a couple weeks later, she ended up committing to Nebraska. Huge, joyous moment for her. Started off playing JV volleyball there at Waverly as a freshman. Worked her way up all the way to that, and one of the best athletes I've ever seen, and a great teammate, great person to be around. So I know we all wish her the best and hope that she can come back soon or whatever she needs for her journey, of course, as you laid out.
Yep, absolutely. But her stepping away, and this wasn't a surprise to Nebraska, so it makes sense now why they added Merritt Beeson. At the time, we were like, well, somebody has to leave. Who's it going to be? Because they're over their numbers. So now her signing makes sense from a numbers standpoint and a talent standpoint. That made sense before. But yeah, so there's kind of how that all fits together with the scholarship and roster numbers for them. Cannot talk today.
No, you're good. I mean, it is worth noting, of course, that we had discussed that, a couple weeks ago, and we got into a little bit more about, the hitters, the players they have coming back. But yeah, Beeson will be joining that group. She'll be expecting to play a big role, and she'll have that opportunity for her.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Even with Whitney out of the mix, I'm still really interested to see who their top hitters are going to be because they bring back a lot of talent, and then Merritt's coming into the fold. But they also have the Gatorade National Player of the Year coming onto their roster too. So going to be exciting all around, I think.
Yeah, they got a few pretty good recruits coming in as they often do.
Not shocking whatsoever. Just too much talent is a great problem to have.
and Nebraska volleyball often has it. Well, moving on to a little bit of Nebraska ball discussion. Amie, you've been busy following the men's team, as I've said last week or a couple weeks ago, sticking with them. And at that time, we were looking ahead to tough road game coming up against Purdue that ended up turning into a 73-55 loss, but followed it up with an ugly but a necessary win, 63-60 win over Ohio State. Low attendance, snow, ice everywhere. Weird kind of circumstances, huh?
Yeah. It was a gross day outside in Lincoln, an even grosser day out in western Nebraska, but an even grosser the first half than that. Oh, it was awful. But they turned things around, ended up winning. One thing to note, just to back up a little bit, against Purdue, they didn't have Sam Griesel, so obviously that's going to hurt them. And no Jawan Gary either. Griesel's back. Gary's out for the rest of the year, which is a big bummer because he was coming on pretty strong lately before he tore up his shoulder a little bit more against Illinois. It's like 2-3 games ago now. So it's unfortunate. They were hoping that they were going to be able to get him back at some point down the stretch after, some extensive rehab, but he sustained more damage than they initially thought. So he's having surgery on Wednesday, is what Fred Hoiberg said today. So they're just going to have to next man up mentality is everybody's favorite cliche, and that's Denham Dawson, a redshirt freshman technically. He was an early enrollee, so he was here this time last year. And he knows the charge that he has, and thankfully Jawan and everybody are kind of helping him out.
Yeah, for sure. It's a bummer to lose Gary. You lose his energy, his defense, kind of just his all around hustle out there. He's just a guy.
Black shirt.
Yeah,
he's a black shirt.
He's a guy you could throw out there and count on some good minutes for. And obviously they, like you said, Denham Dawson and. They have other pieces where you might look to, replace defense or scoring, but ultimately it's his mentality out there. It showed every time he's on the court. So.
Yeah, it's hard to replicate.
For sure. But currently, winning record still 10-9, 3-5 in the Big Ten, and Penn State next up for the team. What are you kind of expecting from that matchup?
Yeah. Nebraska's defense is going to have to be locked down. Penn State has some of the best players in the country, not just the Big Ten, in terms of accuracy and just kind of a do-it-all type. One of their leaders, he's the only player in the country that averages 17 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists per game. So he's going to be tough to stop. but they're also just really, really experienced. According to Ken Palm, they have like the most experience on that roster. They start like 3 fifth-year players and then another senior and then like another upperclassman, I believe. So it's going to be really tough. And that's also a hard place to play, hard place to get to. And yeah, Nebraska's going to have to give everything to them because it's going to be tough. They're really, really good. Like 3-point shooters, one of the best in the country as a team. I think they're shooting like 42%, I think, in league play, which is insane. So 3-point defense is going to have to be top notch.
Yeah, Penn State, they were down for a couple of years. There were a couple seasons where them and Nebraska were really the basement dwellers there in the conference, but things have changed a little bit. And like you mentioned, especially for Penn State, they're in the midst of a great season, and Nebraska trying to keep clawing its way back up. And these road wins in the Big Ten, they sure don't come easy, though.
No, They are super hard to come by, but this would be a really good one for Nebraska to steal if they can do it.
For sure. And another big game coming up for the women's team as well. It's interesting to me, the scheduling. Talk about Purdue and Ohio State for the men's team. Well, women's team just flipped those games a little bit. Hard-fought loss to a very, very good Ohio State team, followed by a win over Purdue. And I think a big, big game coming up against a Maryland team that was their marquee win there early in the season. So you have to imagine that Maryland will be pretty fired up. They're ranked number 11 in the country right now as they come in, and that'll be a Sunday game, a big one for Nebraska. And I look at, the way that they've been playing too. Most recent game there, that one against Purdue. Well, hey, look at off the bench. Maddie Krul, 15 points. Pretty big from her.
Yeah, she's been playing really well lately. And they need it. They need help from everybody that they can get because lest we forget, one of the top players in that last Maryland matchup is out for the season.
I mean, it's kind of a solution from all sorts of things. Sam Hybe, given everything she has.
She's been playing really well lately, too, which is good to see. Because you never knew when she was going to start creeping up to being, 80, 90, 100% of who she was last year. But looks like she's on track for that.
Yes, which is crazy, when you're thinking about how a couple months ago she's probably out for the year, but tough player.
Yeah, what a great story that was.
Absolutely.
It's exciting for them.
And after that, hey, it's another pretty much top 10 matchup at number 10 Iowa. So a couple tough games here coming up for the women's team. Very important for their standings in the Big Ten as they try to gear up for postseason play. It's kind of, to move ahead, into February, that's when your mind starts to turn a little bit. And the number of games left on the schedule, it just keeps going down and the importance keeps going up.
That's how that works. Yes. The men's team has 12 games left until the Big Ten tournament. So if they want to clinch a bid in the NIT, gotta start figuring stuff out. And last I looked, the Nebraska women's team for the bracketology that ESPN does is one of the first 4 out. So they need to steal some wins here down the stretch if they want to make it back to the big dance. Gotcha.
Well, hey, another top 15 win, that'd go a long way. So yeah, we'll see how they can perform against Maryland. Again, Amy will have all the men's basketball coverage that she can provide. She can handle over here a lot of stories, a lot of long work coming in. But hey, let's take a little break from all the Nebraska stuff. We come up to our weekly random segment, and boy, I got a dandy for y'all today.
I have no idea.
Not just for Amy. This is for all you listeners, viewers there at home. We're gonna play a little game called Find the Fake Headline.
These all look dumb.
I like this because sports is you get some interesting stories, you get some interesting headlines, and so every now and then I'll take note of a few. And hey, we've got four on tap today, so I'll just read them out so everybody can know them. Again, you're looking for the fake headline. Headline A: outrage as boat crossing halts cyclists on home straight of race.
I believe that one.
Yep. Number B.
Number B.
Letter B. Yep, my bad. letter A, number B, whatever, whatever it is. Okay. B, NBA G League game postponed after water main breaks, floods corner of arena. C, this comes to us from the UK. Father offers £3,000 to a hypnotist to make his son stop supporting Tottenham.
I believe that too.
Soccer. So that's a soccer club for all y'all. And then D, Falcons delete tweet making fun of Ohio State kickers missed field goal in college football playoff semifinal. These are our options.
These are all kind of crazy. What do you think? No, I'm kidding. I'm going to say the £3,000 one just because that's a lot of money.
That is, yeah.
It's a lot of money. Like, I could believe like £2,000, maybe £1,000. £3,000, that's like, I haven't looked at the exchange rate lately, but that's like $6,000 or so. So I'm going to say that one is the fake one.
You're locked in on C.
I mean, yeah, it's either that one or D, but maybe I'm just like completely wrong, which is not the first time that would happen. So,
well, you are. I can reveal that C did indeed happen. That is a real headline,
insane.
A real story.
That's so much money. Why would you do that?
Hey, it's soccer. It's a way of life. Yeah. Well, you might need to start a hypnosis because that's what he's paying for. So,
no thanks.
But anyway, actually, the fake headline is B, the G League flooding, which I do admit I might have cheated a little bit.
Yeah, because I feel like that's happened before.
It happened in the NHL fairly recently. Nashville Predators arena was slightly flooded.
That's why that sounded familiar to me.
So I cheated, but I still tricked it.
Shocking. It's not that hard to do. I'm not very smart. So,
but hope all your listeners at home got a kick out of that at least. This week's random segment. Look forward to next week. We switch it up every week, so something new in addition to all our normal Husker talk, football, basketball. Looking ahead to a busy week. Good games and good recruiting coming up.
Never a dull moment, is there?
No, definitely not. But I think that's all we got on tap for all of y'all today. Again, really appreciate it. All of you tuning in. We've had several episodes, several months, so all our regular listeners, very much appreciated. For Amie Just, I've been Luke Mullin. Once again, thanks to all of you for tuning in to the Life in the Red podcast.